She reaches into the pantry the way she does every morning. Same shelf, same spot, same small routine that has anchored her days for years. She pours herself a glass, adds a scoop of the powder she has been using since her doctor first mentioned it years ago, and stirs it slowly with a spoon. It tastes a little sweet, a little salty, harmless, healthy even. She carries it to the kitchen table, sits in the morning light, and feels like she is doing something right. What she does not know, and what her last annual physical did not mention, is that what is in that glass may be quietly working against her. Here is something that does not get nearly enough attention during a standard 15-minute office visit. The nutritional rules that applied to your body at 40 are not the same rules your body follows at 65. The physiology shifts. The kidneys filter differently. The blood vessels respond to sodium and mineral load in ways they simply did not before. This is not a failure of medicine. Doctors are working hard and working fast. But there are gaps. And one of the most consequential gaps right now involves a category of foods that has been genuinely and sincerely marketed as heart-healthy, kidney-supporting, or bone-protective. Foods that are sold in organic aisles and recommended on wellness blogs, and that are, for a significant portion of people over 60, quietly elevating blood pressure in ways that do not show up on a food diary. My name is Dr. Evan Noris. I am a cardiologist with over 22 years of clinical experience, focused specifically on cardiovascular disease in older adults. What motivated this particular video is something I have seen repeat itself enough times that I felt I owed it to people watching from home to say it out loud, clearly, and without rushing past the details. After 60, the relationship between your cardiovascular system and the foods you eat becomes more sensitive, not more fragile, but more sensitive, in a very specific biological way. The arterial walls begin to lose some of their natural elasticity. Think of a garden hose that has been left in the sun for a few summers. It still works, but it does not expand and contract as smoothly as it once did. At the same time, the kidneys, which are responsible for regulating how much sodium, potassium, and fluid stay in the bloodstream, begin to work a little more slowly. When those two things happen together, stiffer vessels and slower filtration, even modest increases in the mineral and fluid load on your cardiovascular system produce measurable pressure increases. The heart works harder, the vessels stay under more tension, and the foods responsible are often not the obvious ones. That is what we are here to talk about today. Before we go any further, tell me in the comments below, do you check the sodium content on the foods you eat regularly? Just type yes or no. I am genuinely curious how many people are already watching this number. The first food category I want to talk about is something many people over 60 have specifically added to their routine because they were told it was good for them. Plant-based protein powders and meal replacement shakes used in their morning smoothie. Now I want to be clear. Protein matters enormously after 60. Muscle mass declines with age, and adequate protein intake is one of the most important tools we have for preserving strength, balance, and metabolic health. The issue is not protein. The issue is what gets added to these products to make them palatable, shelf-stable, and nutrient-dense. Many plant-based protein powders contain sodium levels between 200 and 400 milligrams per serving, plus added phosphorus compounds used as thickening and stabilizing agents. For younger kidneys, that phosphorus load is processed and excreted without incident. For kidneys that are functioning at the lower end of normal, which, according to clinical observation, describes a meaningful percentage of adults over 65, those phosphorus compounds can interfere with the hormonal signals that regulate blood vessel tension. A patient of mine, a retired veteran named Gerald, who had been incredibly diligent about his health since retiring, came in with blood pressure readings that had crept up over 18 months, despite no change in his diet that he could identify. When we sat down and went through everything he consumed in a day, the protein shake he added each morning stood out. It had 320 milligrams of sodium and a phosphate additive listed fourth on the ingredients. We switched him to a lower sodium whey isolate without phosphate additives, and within 8 weeks, his readings had dropped meaningfully. The practical takeaway: read the ingredient list of any protein supplement you use, not just the front label. Look for added phosphate compounds and check the sodium per serving against your daily target, which for most people over 60 should be discussed with your PCP, but is generally under 1,500 milligrams total. The second thing I want to address is something that carries an almost universally positive reputation: and that is vegetable juice. Blended greens, cold-pressed beet juice, celery juice, commercial brands like V8. These are sold in every health food section, and the antioxidant benefits of the vegetables themselves are real. But the sodium content of many commercial vegetable juices is startling. A single 8-ounce serving of standard tomato or vegetable juice can contain 480 to 650 milligrams of sodium, and that is before you account for anything else you eat that day. The reason this matters specifically after 60 goes back to those arterial walls we discussed. When sodium is elevated in the bloodstream, the body retains more water to dilute it. That additional fluid volume increases the pressure inside blood vessels that are already less elastic than they used to be. Think of it as inflating a slightly stiff balloon. A younger balloon expands easily. An older one takes more pressure to fill. A woman named Constance, a former landscape designer I treated several years ago, had been drinking 2 glasses of vegetable juice every morning as part of a wellness routine she had built after her husband was diagnosed with heart disease. She was doing it for her health. Her blood pressure had been gradually rising for 2 years by the time she came to me, and her previous workup had not flagged diet as a likely cause. When we calculated her daily sodium intake from that juice alone, it was approaching 1,200 milligrams before breakfast was over. Switching to fresh low-sodium versions she made at home, or simply eating the vegetables whole, made a significant difference within a few months. If you love vegetable juice, look for specifically labeled low-sodium versions, or make your own without added salt. The third food I want to discuss may surprise you even more than the first two. Low-fat dairy staples like cottage cheese and certain soft white cheeses, marketed as high-protein health foods. These are popular specifically among older adults trying to meet protein goals while keeping calories moderate. And again, the protein benefit is legitimate. The issue is the sodium content, which is often higher than people realize, and the compound effect of eating these foods daily. A half-cup serving of standard cottage cheese contains between 350 and 460 milligrams of sodium, depending on the brand. Eaten twice a day, as some people do, that alone accounts for nearly half of a recommended daily sodium ceiling. For the aging cardiovascular system, it is not any single meal that creates the problem. It is the sustained baseline pressure that never quite comes down, because the sodium never quite clears. A retired engineer named Franklin came to see me after his PCP noted that his blood pressure was consistently higher in the afternoon than in the morning. He was meticulous about not adding salt at the table. But when we looked at what he typically ate between noon and dinner, cottage cheese featured prominently. Switching to a low-sodium cottage cheese, yes, these exist, and some taste nearly identical, was one part of a small set of changes that brought his readings back into a healthier range. Ask at your supermarket chain, or check online for low-sodium cottage cheese options. The difference in sodium content between standard and low-sodium versions can be 200 milligrams per serving or more. If you are still with me and finding this useful, type the word "watching" in the comments right now. It genuinely helps me understand who this information is reaching, and it helps this video find people who need it most. The fourth category is one that surprises nearly everyone I mention it to, and that is certain pickles and kraut that have been enthusiastically embraced in the health and wellness world for their probiotic content. Kimchi, miso, certain pickled vegetables, and commercially prepared sauerkraut are regularly recommended for gut health, and the evidence for their probiotic value is real and growing. But fermentation and preservation in many of these foods require significant salt. A single tablespoon of miso paste contains approximately 630 milligrams of sodium. A half-cup serving of commercially prepared kimchi or sauerkraut can contain 400 to 550 milligrams. For someone over 60 who is eating these foods regularly as part of a health-conscious routine, the sodium accumulation is substantial. The physiological concern here is not just the sodium itself. It is the interaction between high sodium intake and the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, which is the hormonal axis your kidneys use to regulate blood pressure. As we age, this system becomes less responsive, meaning the body is slower to compensate when sodium levels rise. A language teacher named Miriam, who had made fermented foods a daily centerpiece of her meals after reading extensively about gut-brain health, came to see me frustrated that her blood pressure had not responded to 2 different medications, as well as her cardiologist expected. When we mapped her diet, the sodium from fermented foods alone was substantial and consistent. We did not eliminate fermented foods from her routine. The probiotic benefit mattered to her and to her overall health picture. But we shifted toward lower sodium options, reduced portion sizes, and spread them across the week rather than making them a daily staple. The practical advice: if you love fermented foods, choose lower sodium varieties where available, keep portions small, and make sure your PCP knows you are eating them regularly so they can factor it into your overall cardiovascular plan. The fifth food I want to address is one that has been specifically and repeatedly recommended to older adults with cardiovascular concerns, which makes it the most important one to discuss carefully. That food is canned or packaged fish, particularly tuna, salmon, and sardines. The omega-3 content of these fish is genuinely cardioprotective. That science is solid and well established. The problem is the sodium in the liquid or brine in which many of these products are packed, as well as sodium added directly to the fish. A single can of standard water-packed tuna can contain 300 to 500 milligrams of sodium. Sardines packed in sauce may be higher. For someone eating canned fish several times a week as a heart-healthy protein source, which is exactly what many cardiologists and dietitians recommend, the sodium accumulation across a week can be significant and consistent. A retired librarian named Hector, who had been following a heart-healthy eating plan almost perfectly for 3 years, came to me puzzled by blood pressure readings that had plateaued higher than expected. His plan included canned fish 4 to 5 times a week. When we switched him to no salt-added canned options, which are widely available, and rinsed the fish before eating to further reduce surface sodium, his readings moved in the right direction within a month. The omega-3 benefit was preserved. The sodium load dropped considerably. This is the change. Always look for no salt added on the label of any canned fish product, and regardless of what the label says, drain and rinse the fish before eating. So here is where I want to leave you. And I want to say this the way I would say it if you were sitting across from me in my office after a long conversation about your health. Starting tonight, I want you to pull out 2 or 3 of the packaged foods you eat most regularly. Not the things you think of as junk food, but the things you have been eating because you believe they are good for you. And look at the sodium content per serving on the nutrition label. Add up what a normal day looks like. Most of my patients, when they do this for the first time, are genuinely surprised. The goal is not to alarm you. The goal is to give you accurate information, because you cannot make a meaningful change without it. Once you have that number, bring it to your next appointment and ask your PCP or a registered dietitian to help you set a realistic daily sodium target for your age and cardiovascular status. Ask specifically about no salt-added versions of the foods you love. Ask whether there are low-sodium alternatives that preserve the nutritional benefit you are trying to get. Small, consistent changes, not dramatic overhauls, are what move blood pressure over time. You have more control here than you may have been told. One important thing before you go. Everything I have shared in this video is meant to be a starting point for a conversation with your own PCP, not a replacement for one. Your health history is unique. Your medications interact with your diet in ways that require personalized guidance, and what is right for someone else may not be right for you. Please bring these ideas to your doctor as a partner in the discussion. That is exactly how this information is intended to be used. And if this conversation has you thinking about what else might be quietly affecting your cardiovascular health, the next topic I want to walk you through is something almost no one connects to blood pressure: the timing of when you eat, and what that does to your heart overnight.